Welcome to Three Dads Over Coffee, where the conversations are irreverent, unscripted, quite possibly irrelevant, and always illuminating.
What's up?
What is up, Scott motherfucking Tool?
Yeah, baby, we're here.
Yeah. So I was
rolling.
telling John you said yesterday you're going full idiot today. So I mean I can't even imagine what that means, but I'm looking forward to it.
Oh
excited.
yeah. All right, you ready to get started?
Do it.
If you're waiting on a waiter, doesn't that make you the waiter?
It makes me
Yes.
it makes me hate my life right now.
Right?
This is wow.
If,
Well,
if
it's not
Jack
going to get
helped-
worse.
If Jack helped you off a horse, would you?
Oh God. Oh,
The answer is
God.
yes. The answer is yes.
You already do.
Yeah.
Where's my horse?
Fuck, you're on fire today. Have you been up all night drinking or?
These actually come from my 15-year-old son.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm not really that clever.
Oh my God.
He's got I mean, loads of these.
We were listening to so I was driving my daughter Mel around yesterday, and she's like, "Oh my God, you got to hear this song." It's like, and she's like, like Toronto slang?" And I'm like, "There's Toronto slang? No, I don't know what that is." And so she plays this song, and it was some kind of like, I don't know if it was like a rap song. I don't know what it is, but it was apparently it wasn't even English, man. And she's like beside me in the car, just absolutely laughing hysterically. And I'm like, I actually don't even know what this person is saying. Like, what is funny about this? Can you help me understand what's funny about this? And she could not talk. She was laughing so hard. So I come home and I say to Chloe, "Fuck, do you listen to this shit?" And so Mel puts it on and Chloe starts laughing hysterically. And I'm like, is this what being old fucking feels like? Like, I actually have no idea what's happening right now. And then they're laughing at me for being just like an old, out of touch idiot. So I don't know. I feel like this is what being old feels like.
Well, what makes you old or me old was when my boys do that, and it makes me feel fucking angry. I'm like, turn this shit off now. Like, I am gonna fucking rage. A, I don't understand this. B, this is not music. And C, just fucking shut it off. That's when old kicks in.
Yeah.
It's the worst thing to do is to try to understand it, to like try
Yeah.
to get into, because it's just no. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
I'm
I liken it to like when I first got out of college. I remember I was working in Toronto, and I worked with all different ethnic types, and I found that when like I was doing like IT, like help desk support, and I would try and understand these people with different accents, and I found the more that I really tried to kind of focus in on like what they're saying, the less I could actually understand. So I almost needed to kind of like fade to the background and like pick up the easy words, and that's honestly what it's like when I listen to this bullshit music. I'm like, oh, okay, so they're talking about buying a Bentley and trying to chase women. I'm like, what the fuck is going on right now? Like, god damn it.
I mean,
Anyways,
buying a Bentley and chasing women sounds fun, but like, why do you have to communicate it like that?
yeah, like, why do you have to mumble? Like, take the marbles out of your mouth, god damn it.
Oh man. Yeah, I don't know. So the most of the music I listen to these days, surprising to me, is it's country music, but it's really only Florida Georgia Line, if you've ever heard of them, because they're so over the top in their accent, and it's so cliche. It's one cliche after another, and it's so I'm just like, this has got to be a joke. And then I realized it wasn't a joke, but I just started to like it because it's
like
just
country.
so extreme. It's so
Like,
I mean, their accents are so strong I'm like, that's how people really talk. Usually when you hear a singer, the singing sounds pretty normal, and then you hear them talk, speak, and then it's like, then you get the twang. Oh man, their singing is even more extreme than their speaking.
I like
I don't know,
country
something,
music.
something about it I like.
It's simple. Like I like that it's like you know what
Yeah.
it's about, right? Like when I was
But beer. It's about beer.
yeah,
This about beer and fucking. That's what
yeah.
it is.
Trucks and
That's right.
trucks.
Truck, yeah, driving drunk, fucking like I remember when I was in the military when I was younger and I went out to Western Canada for 3 months and we had this big thing going on. And I mean, it was on the prairies, man. And like I had never experienced that culture. I did not even know. So this would have been like 1992. I didn't even know cowboys, like that culture still actually existed. I mean, and so I went out there and it is like a different freaking universe, man. Like where here in Ontario, a small town would be like 2,500 people, say. Out there, a small town is like 130 people, and there's not another one for like an hour. Like it is so remote. And back then, radar detectors were still allowed out there. And it was so flat that like you'd like get 5 minutes of warning before a cop was coming. Like it was crazy.
It's
So
amazing.
yeah. So I always got fat. I really liked it though. I really like that kind of, I don't know, that culture and the music. So ever since then, I've still liked country music. And I'll tell you something, one more thing before we get rolling here, that I actually lived. So when I was out there, the big song was fucking Achy Breaky Heart by Billy Cyrus.
Jesus.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And so I lived in 2001. I was in but I was doing some consulting work, and so the company put me up in this condo in Toronto. It was kind of like a nice building, and they had a really nice gym in there. And actually, Billy Ray Cyrus lived in that building, and so we'd be in the gym sometimes when we were working out because he was filming that show Doc at the time, and he still had that full mullet. And seeing
Jesus.
that fucking glorious pelt in real life was like, wow, man, that thing is
Did you touch it?
rich.
Did you
I
touch
wanted
it?
to. I wanted to. I mean, I reached out, but he kept pulling away.
Yeah, there's no graceful way of like,
Strange.
you can't just accidentally bump into it. It's not like, bump in the shoulder. It's like, well, let me just pet it. What do you feed that?
Yeah.
So there you go. Okay, Scott, what do you got?
What do I got?
Yeah, I think. Did you want to talk about like?
Yeah, shit's blowing up, isn't it? These
Mm.
days. I don't know about you guys. I try to avoid the news, and it's still blowing up. I mean, it gets to me everywhere. In fact, you posted about it this morning.
I did.
Something
Yeah.
very similar to that. You're giving Americans a little American history lesson. You know more. Congratulations. You know more American history than most Americans do.
I find American history fascinating because I love.
So fucked up. No.
Well, it is, but I mean, all our history is fucked up. But I mean, what I liked about it was the original idea of it. Like the idea behind the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Like I just found that experiment in government really, really interesting. But yeah, I think it's like what drives me crazy. So what I posted about this morning was the fucking George Floyd murder, right? Like that. Have you fucking watched that video? It's sickening, man.
I haven't.
It
I don't
is
know if I
so-
can bring myself. I mean, I don't doubt it for a second.
It's just straight up fucking murder, man. And I mean, now the guy's been at least one of the guys, and I think probably some more will be charged. But it's what is amazing to me is, and I understand it too. Like you'll read. I don't spend much time on the news at all. In fact, I didn't even hear about this until a few days after it happened. But my parents were telling me about it. And so now there's all this rioting or whatever. And really, what the idea behind what I wrote this morning was just walking people through like the history of. Basically, like again, my very fucking non-expert Canadian white guy perspective on the sort of the high level, black experience through for the last 500 years, and it's like, and people are like pissed at the rioters, and I'm like, which I understand that, but at the same time, what the fuck would you do? Like if you're in that situation, man, like at your fucking wit's end, I have a ton of empathy for them. And sometimes I get pissed off at myself because I never fucking take any action, like I'll bitch about it or I'll not like it, but I don't really do anything about it. And I don't know what to do.
So go ahead.
No, that's it. I'm done.
Well, so what would you do? That's what I mean. What would you do? Because there's a lot of people that are saying, for one thing, you should be angry. I always kind of, I don't know about that. Am I really obligated to be angry?
Yeah, that
am I
I'm
obligated to ruin
immediately
my
put
own mood?
off by that. Yeah.
Yes. Don't obligate me to do that. But if you're going to act with all the things that you could act on, environmental stewardship, helping the homeless. I mean, you name it. I mean, you could be obligated to do anything. And I'm not saying that this isn't an important issue, but I guess I'm wondering what would you do? What could you do? I mean, just you, not just as a society. Obviously, all of us could think of a long list of things that we could do, but what would you do?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, so like if you think of like I'll just use the environment for example. I mean, I think one of the things we can take on that, we can take small action, right? Like, so, I've been telling you guys, I don't know if I was telling you last week or I probably said it, but like, Tanya's turning our front yard into a fucking permaculture garden where there's medicinal and food plants going in there. That's just a small little, I mean, it's a political statement, is a small political statement to, as much as it is about growing food, right? Like, it's like, you know what, these beautifully manicured lawns, for example, maybe there's another thing here that might help us, create a little bit more food security and, practically show some environmental stewardship. I think that getting some discussion going, maybe like trying to have some fucking constructive discussion going, might be a step you could take. But that all honestly seems kind of pathetic. And this is what I struggle with is I don't want to get involved in the political process, man. It makes me want to puke, like that, all that disgusting cesspool of, so, I don't know. I really don't know. And I think that feeling of, I also think that part of what prevents me from doing things, I'll be honest, and I think it's one of the perverse incentives of the way our society is, relative to a lot of people, I make a really good income, and I pay a lot of fucking tax, and so there's always this part of me that goes, you know what, I pay taxes to take care of this shit. And I think that which I know is not a constructive or healthy way to look at it, but sometimes I think that feeling prevents us as individuals from just supporting our neighbors who need it the most, because there's all these, government programs and all this stuff they can get. So, I mean, I'm fucking ranting right now. I have no idea, but I don't know the answer to your question. I just know that I just feel like maybe trying to facilitate some actual constructive dialogue. I don't know if that'll make a difference, but I don't see how it could hurt, I guess is my take on it right now.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I don't know a whole lot about the latest event. Obviously, my understanding is that that somebody, black guy, got murdered. I'm assuming by, was it police?
Yeah.
Down in the States, and it's it's another event, and I don't know if it's unique to other events that have happened in previous years. Obviously, racism is still an issue, but Scott, to your point, like when people start saying, and I actually read a post last night, and I can't remember if it was just on a general feed or in the Alliance, but somebody said, well, you should be speaking out against racism, and if you're not, then you're basically part of the problem. And honestly, my initial reaction to that was, fuck you. Like, why are you telling me that I'm part of the problem if I'm not speaking out against it? It's kind of like saying that I'm a racist if I don't speak out against it. And well, that's not necessarily a true statement. So to your question, as far as what do you do about it? It sounds super, I don't know, maybe it's just a horrible idea and ridiculous, but I think you have conversations. I think you have conversations with people that you feel can make a change, because it's one thing to make a change within your sphere of control. So to use Jason's example, he wants to make a small contribution environmentally in a positive manner. So he does it within his sphere of control. Maybe he talks to you and I and a bunch of his friends, and then that's something that they decide to kind of take on, and then that's a bigger environmental change, right? So if you have meaningful conversations and you're really challenged to say, okay, well, what does it mean if I'm not actively speaking out against racism? Does it make me a racist, right? Or the fact that it irritates me and makes me angry that somebody is telling me that I should feel a certain way or I should be doing something, and if I don't, that I'm that person that's kind of the bad guy. I don't know. I don't know if there's a thing that one person could do that can make a big enough change or contribution to fixing the problem. I think it really is through, at least the seed is, the idea of actually having a meaningful conversation with people that can affect change. I don't know if that's a cop out.
I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, I feel the same way, although I certainly admit, kind of like what you said, Jason, I'm among the most privileged, class of people that there is. I'm a, fairly well educated, economically secure white male in the United States. I mean, I have full rights and freedoms that I think most people think apply in theory to everyone, and clearly it's not that case. It's not that way. I don't doubt for a second that you know there are black lesbian women in my neighborhood, and I mean, God, on all three counts, they're kind of outsiders in many ways. Just that as an example, someone who's lived a life very different than mine just because of those things that they didn't choose. But yeah, I reject, the obligation to act one way or the other. And I don't know if it is a cop out or not to not act because somebody has tried to obligate me to back.
But it goes back to what Jason had said last week, where somebody tells you to do something, and I think generally people's reaction is to recoil. I think is the term that Jason used, and I feel that myself. It's not that I don't want to act, but at the same time, it's like, well, you can't just say, well, you need to do this. It's like, yeah, okay, yes, there's a problem, but fixing it is, telling people to do something is not on the path to getting it resolved.
Right. So maybe here's the thing that I think is the kind of thing that we can all do, certainly as fathers, which is, how do we present this to our kids? They certainly see this, they see big issues like this, because they're on social media and it's all over social media. But it's, how do you talk to your kids? And so one thing that I've been thinking a lot about is my assumption about kind of where they are in this issue. When I was growing up in the Deep South in the 1970s, no question, bigotry was it was still fairly institutionalized. I think a lot of people would argue that that hasn't changed at all. I think there has been improvement. I think clearly there's been some improvement in that. But now I see my kids, there was no way. I mean, it was definitely segregated when I was growing up. I mean, it just was. And now it's like my kids, it appears that my kids could care less. They've got friends who are black and friends who have two moms and two dads. And I mean, it seems to be an irrelevant characteristic of a friend of theirs. But that's an assumption that I'm making, that they don't see color or that they don't see things like that, which is not necessarily true. So I did have a conversation with my son, my 15-year-old, about it, because there was a local situation where a student, and this probably happened a year ago, but the video just came out during all this stuff, because there was that Ahmaud Arbery in Georgia who was also killed by a couple of kind of neighborhood patrol guys.
Yeah.
And then this happened. So, I mean, it's coming at this time, which is particularly bad, which I'm sure is why the video was released now. But this young man, who was a high school student, I believe he's a classmate of my son, went on, I think it was on Instagram, and posted a little video or somebody posted the video of him with a gun pointing it at the camera saying, "This is how I kill N."
Mhm.
And I'm like,
Wow.
boom. So of course
Yeah.
my community has just gone bananas about it. And I talked to my son about it, and I was just like, what's your reaction to this? I didn't want to try to program him too much, but I mean, yeah, he wasn't horrified or any of those other things, which were very adult reactions. He's just like, yeah, I mean, I would be,
Hmm.
I'd be fucked if I did something like that. And I'm like, you're absolutely right. That's exactly right. You're right. So would I. So would your sister. All of us would be. But I'm like, that's not. But I'm just like, how do you? I don't know. I haven't really I'm still thinking about the right way to have that conversation. And it's a series of conversations. It's not just one conversation. It's how do you present it? Ultimately, I don't want them to look at race or to consider judging someone on the basis of the color of their skin. I want that to be kind of not irrelevant, but it's not a basis. I don't know. I'm rambling, but that's I think that is something that all of us can do, and we already do it. It's just, do we now kind of take a look at it a little differently and be more intentional about bringing that issue up, because this is absolutely for all of us a teaching moment.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think part of the issue too is that things are, for whatever reason, I don't even pretend to fucking understand why, but like are obviously becoming increasingly polarized. And I don't know how much that represents like like it doesn't represent anybody I know, but I don't know how much it represents like the broader population, or how much it just represents like the shrill vocal minority at either end of the fucking spectrum of but like I remember, because I think what happens is um like, so I consider myself, like I look at myself and I'm like, I don't fucking, I mean, look at my team. Like, and I'm not trying to make myself sound like some kind of hero here, but you can look at my team and say, clearly I fucking don't, I hire people based on their ability, not their fucking skin color. I mean, it's kind of like a mini United Nations to a certain extent, like, so, and again, I'm not trying to claim heroism here. I'm just saying, like, that's an action I can take. But what I think the part of the problem is, to your point, John, is, when you have people telling you are a certain thing, like you're fucking racist because you're not doing this. And I'm like, I was talking to so I had this guy in my previous podcast, and I actually did not know, like I have never actually spoken to like a full on social justice warrior type person before or since. They're not fucking people in my circle. And so this guy, I didn't even know this was his point of view. We were actually coming to talk about racism, the relationship between racism and mental health. And so he comes on, and man, it was such an interesting conversation. Like, it was actually fascinating conversation to hear somebody with that point of view. But one of the things he said was, I was like, I don't know, man, like, fuck, like my daughter is not, like, her best friend is black. Like, it's not even a thing. Like, and he goes, I said, like, when she hangs out with her, she's not like thinking, oh, I'm hanging out with my black best friend. She thinks I'm fucking hanging out with Sophia. Right. And so, and he actually said to me, well, the fact that, I don't remember exactly how he worded it, but basically the idea was the fact that she sees, like, that she doesn't see a person of color and makes her racist because she's not honoring her heritage. And I'm like, what in the fuck are you talking about? That is, when you say shit like that, you just make normal people hate you, right? Like, I mean, like, so, I mean, I think that's part of the problem too, is like, you get a group of people who's fucking being told that they're, being labeled with something that they really don't feel like they are. And I think that's part of the problem. But hey, John, I wanted to ask you a question. So when you say that, when people say that, you get angry, like, how much of this, is there any part of that anger that has to do with you at some level feeling like you should be doing something else? You know what I mean? Like doing more somehow.
No, I think, I think my, my initial or innate reaction to, to be angry about it is because, in this case, I'm not racist. And I've had, we could kind of get into probably not a good idea to get into the whole gender conversation, but I mean, it's the same thing. It's like,
now let's do that.
Yeah,
let's go there.
Yeah.
This is going to be a 9-hour podcast. But honestly,
Zero
it's all,
downloads.
yeah, it's honestly, it's all part of the same thing, is that, obviously there are racial issues even in Canada. So the States, Canada, whatever. But as soon as you've got, to your point, Justin, or to Jason rather, if you've got like these social justice warriors that are saying, well, you're not honoring, somebody's heritage because you don't, acknowledge the fact that they're black or they're whatever. Um, to me, it's just like, well, so you're not happy that way. But then if I did observe, make the observation that they're black, well, then you're a racist because you're seeing skin color and not a person. So it's like, there's no fucking way to make you happy. So for me, it's just like, it is a non-issue. Like I remember when my boys were really young and they would have a friend come over, and like we had neighbors, and my one son really took a liking to the girl, she happened to be black, and I said, what do you think about her? And she's like, oh, I really have, a great time spending time with her. And I'm like, great. So, and I said, well, what do you really like? Well, she's funny, we have a good time and whatever else. Um, and I said, I can't remember if he brought it up or I did, but I just said, what do you think about the fact that she's black? And he's like, I don't know. It doesn't really mean anything. That's the color of her skin. And he's like, well, what does it mean? I said, well, you know how you have brown hair and your brother has red hair? That's basically the difference. Like it's just something visually different. And if they do something different and they happen to look different, well, then it becomes more relevant about, what it is that they're doing, not how they look. So to your question, Jason, like that's the part that pisses me off, is that, people start just kind of wielding this labeling machine that you're a racist without really knowing anything about you, because they feel almost they get caught up in the idea that, well, if you're not, kind of fighting for, the people that are in this case afflicted by, such serious violence, then you must be for it. And I'm appalled at anybody that would commit a crime like that, white, black, Asian. I don't give a shit who you are. I think it's fucking deplorable. And I would, if you're white, the same conversation. So that's why I get angry. It's not that I don't feel like I should be doing something different. I do struggle with the bigger conversation around what is my contribution around how to affect change, because I do want to be part of that change. But as one person, I'm not just kind of bowing out saying, well, as one guy, I can't do anything, and then just assume that I can't. I'm willing to have a conversation with as many people as possible to find out how I can better be part of the solution. But that's why I get angry.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I hear you. I think that it's just a lot of things that go through my head. I mean, I kind of feel like I have both reactions. I also am very turned off and a little pissed when somebody tries to obligate me to feel like I should feel a sense of responsibility or should change my emotional kind of mood to suit theirs. But I do wonder for sure, what are some things that I could do? I absolutely reject the political avenue as a legitimate, as a productive response completely. Oh my gosh, the number of emails I'm already getting that go right into my junk folder, luckily, about raising money for Joe Biden's campaign, about all this kind of stuff. I'm like, talk about, I might as well literally flush money in my wallet down the toilet.
Yeah.
Just that's useless. But I do wonder if there are some things that I could be doing or should be doing. And that's just kind of what keeps it going for me. And I don't know, it is very complicated here where I live, because it is, people are hot about it. I know in Minneapolis, where a lot of this stuff happened, that's kind of ground zero, so to speak. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I'm a little bit on edge about I've seen people carrying signs, young black men carrying signs around, just around here, driving around, you know, and referencing it. And I mean, I get it. I mean, again, as being a privileged class, I've never been part of a culture that has been marginalized. And so I guess I can understand someone who is black thinking that their culture has been disrespected and they want respect. I can understand that intellectually.
Totally.
Yep.
But I mean, and it's not just black. I mean, Irish have a very strong culture because when they came to the United States, they were shunned. Irish need not apply. Yep. So they stuck together. So they have a very strong identity. I think that's why. So I get that. But just like I can't understand their culture, maybe they can't understand how it is that I appear to be complacent. I mean, I just haven't grown up. I was not raised in a situation where you honored your whiteness. In fact, you absolutely don't do that shit. You don't do that, or it immediately gets, I mean, I honestly don't really care, not to get off on too much of a tangent, but I became probably 10 years ago very interested in the writings of, and really kind of the preachings of, he was a Catholic priest, and I'm not Catholic. I went to a Catholic high school, but I was a non-Catholic. And he was a Catholic priest. His name was Anthony DeMello, and he kind of blended Buddhist thought and Catholic teachings together, which eventually got all of his teaching completely, for lack of a better word, excommunicated. I think the Catholic Church has totally disavowed his teachings as being heretical since. But he basically said, I abhor nationalism as just kind of a, you know, he was just talking about nationalism, but I feel the same way. I really don't identify with much of anything in regards to me being, I don't think of myself as being an American, let alone a Southern American, which is a whole nother animal. I don't identify as being in a religious group, as being a certain race, being male. I mean, I just don't feel a strong sense of identity in that. And I think that allows me to be more open. At least I want to believe that. I want it. And I kind of feel like that's the way we should be.
Yeah.
In a way. Because if I'm a white male, then it is an us versus them.
Right.
And I don't want to be that way. But at the same time, I think the other side, someone else might think that I'm being disrespectful of their culture. But I really kind of don't. I can appreciate that you celebrate a wedding or a funeral or different events in a different manner because of your culture. I can appreciate that. And I'd love to attend it, and it'd be very different for me, but I just don't identify with it.
Yeah. And don't disagree with it.
I kind of don't care, honestly. I really just kind of don't care. It's different. I appreciate it, but I'm not going to get all into it because it just doesn't really matter to me that much.
You know,
no, but it's also not a bad thing either. It's like, okay, great. You want to do something different, and it happens to be different than the way I would do it. Not only am I not against it, but hey, great. Like, go for it. Like, it's not a problem.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think I was listening to a podcast actually the other day, and they were talking, because I'm with you, Scott. I feel like the way that we talk about nationalism or think about it, I think is one of the most destructive forces or destructive ideas that has ever fucking befallen mankind. But what this guy was talking about the podcast, I wish I could remember which one, because it was really interesting. But he was saying that the idea, the original sort of idea, or whether it's the classic definition of nationalism, is really just being committed to and, proud of your community and culture and wanting to build on it, not at the exclusion or to the fucking detriment of somebody else. But what it's turned into is, I'm better because I fucking, by some miracle of geography or luck. I happen to be born in this fucking place versus some other place, and therefore I am better than you. Like, I mean, if you look at the States, right? I mean, one of the whole things about the States was this idea of manifest destiny, and fucking you still hear people talk about American exceptionalism. Fuck off, man. Seriously, like what, look what that has created, right? I mean, it's fucking it's all,
Awesomeness.
yeah. But and I think as so I agree with you. I mean, I think I say the same thing. I don't identify. I mean, I feel very fortunate, fucking very fortunate to be born where I am. Like, I mean, there's no fucking war. We have good opportunities, but I don't feel like I don't identify as like a Canadian, and somehow there's fucking 35 million people here spread across 5,000 miles, for Christ's sake. Like, somebody who grows up on the East Coast, what the fuck do they have in common with somebody that grows up like on the West Coast or whatever? It's just, we're two people, like they're all just arbitrary fucking lines drawn on a map, man. So I don't feel, I understand how people do. I'm not criticizing them for it. I just don't. I just want to try to be a good person. That's really what it's about. And so yeah, I agree. Like, I think nationalism has gotten fucking twisted around, and I think it's kind of the same thing. It's a different flavor of the same thing. Is where it's this idea of us and the others. Like, fuck that, man. Like, I would just, I don't know. But I was thinking about, as we're talking, and I'm thinking about, like, how do we make a contribution? I think us fucking muddling our way through and being willing to talk about this shit is a contribution. Because you know what?
Yeah,
if somebody listens to this and they say, "You motherfucking three white idiots," you think there's, you're doing enough and you should do this. And maybe there's somebody will fucking say something that's like, yeah, actually that's a great idea. Maybe
Sure.
that is something I could do. Like, so if it at least contributes to some kind of conversation, like, fuck, I feel good about at least being open to having it. Right.
Are we actually trying to contribute to some kind of good by doing this? I thought we were just fucking around.
I don't know. I have to take a piss right now, so you guys keep talking. I was debating whether or not I should put it on mute.
The lack of professionalism. Can't you take all your gear into the bathroom with you? I mean,
but turn off your video.
Yeah. No. We're going fucking full fidelity.
Jeez. All right, fine.
Yeah, I think the other thing too, like, just as we were kind of talking about it is, I think we need to, I certainly feel that I need to acknowledge the fact that, yeah, while I definitely don't think of myself as, special, the fact that I happen to be like a white male living in a very, to Jason's point, in a very fortunate geographic area, just the same as you are, Scott. Like, I think that does come with some significant benefit where other people in the entire planet, and some of which are in Canada and the States, haven't had the good fortune that we have had as well. So I think that we also need to acknowledge the fact that that we have, I want to be not careful with my words, but there are some benefits that have come along with being, born a white guy, right? And
absolutely.
But at the same time, I don't know if there should be a social tax to be paid by that I necessarily owe somebody that isn't that. Fundamentally, I operate, and I think generally the three of us operate in the spirit of, how can we provide value to anybody in our lives, that, whether it's the people that are closest to us, or, other folks that we, work with or kind of run into at the grocery store, independent of their, where they've come from. I just think it's important to kind of have that awareness as well, just to say, okay, well, how could that not necessarily be perceived, but I do try to be cognizant of it.
Yeah. So, hey, we touched on the gender thing, but we didn't get into it. Like, so, because I think it's, I shouldn't say it's similar. I don't know if that's true, but I mean, the way I think about that is, like, I don't understand it, man. Like, but I honestly don't give a shit. Like, if somebody, I have one very specific thing I struggle with, but if you want to call yourself fucking Zerzy, butterfly, whatever the fuck they, the 70,000 genders, go ahead, go right ahead. I do not fucking care. If you are a transgendered person, don't fucking care, And in fact, I'm what I'm really curious about, like, so for example, we work with a transgender woman, John, she reports to John, or does she still?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And I mean, I find like I find, so I'm going to just be totally honest. I have never actually spent any time with a transgendered person. I just never really have. Not because, just because I never have crossed paths. And it was an adjustment. Like any other new thing is. And I've had the chance to work with her on a particular project, and I feel very comfortable. But it wasn't like immediate, because it's different, right? And so, but I'm really grateful for having had the chance to do that, because I think I'm a wiser, more empathetic, more understanding person as a result of having had the opportunity to have this experience, And so, but what I struggle with is, I fucking hate, actually, is the idea that our speeches can be compelled by the government, right? So,
Yeah.
hey man, if you come up to me and you say, I want to be called this, I'll probably just call you that. I don't give a shit, man. Like, if it's important to you, whatever, I probably will. But if it's when the government tells me that I have to fucking do that, or that there are, specific words, or that I am, mandated to call you a certain thing, that's where it's a fucking problem for me, man. Because I always think, imagine whenever you want to cede a power to the government, imagine the worst possible way it could fucking possibly be used, because it'll
Mhm.
eventually get there, right? So
You're surprisingly pessimistic, man. I mean, for such a happy. I mean, sorry, I didn't mean to totally jump all over you, but I mean,
no.
I think, I think you're probably right. If there's something bad that could happen, somebody's going to take advantage of it, and might. But I mean, I guess my thoughts about that are that no one, and this is hard for me to swallow too, I have no obligation, or I should have no expectation that other people should conduct themselves to not piss me off.
Right.
I cannot have that. And that applies black, white, trans, or, any of that. So for people who are pissed off that they're using, I think you mentioned this in a previous episode, that you want your daughters to be able to say anything. No word is out of bounds, right?
Mhm.
But with that freedom, you better understand what's going to happen if you use the N-word.
Yes.
Yep.
You have the freedom to use it, right? It shouldn't be controlled by someone else, but there's going to be a consequence of that, and you're going to pay that consequence if you use that word. And you choose. But if I were a person of color, or if somebody calls me a cracker, and that pisses me off, well, then that's on me. That my responsibility to say, well, it's always, as we've talked about many times in other circles, that is a reflection of something going on within me. If I call somebody else the N-word, that has nothing to do with them. That has to do with me. That's what's going on in my head. And if I feel it, somebody calling me something, that's also on me. I can only affect myself. And again, that kind of gets back to the whole group think and the damage that we do by labeling ourselves and labeling others. But I just think we can all do something better by thinking about, why do I feel this way? And that's hard to do. It's really hard for me to do, because I react out of emotion. I shoot from the hip, and then maybe if I'm lucky later on, I kind of do a little autopsy on kind of why I did my stupid shit. But
I'm with you. Like, I find the whole COVID thing is like this too, right? Like, I find myself I notice myself not thinking, I don't want to say not thinking rationally about it, but I think there's been plenty of times where I've been, my thought process and some of the words I've said have been dictated by emotion more than logic, because I don't know what to think about this thing. Like my gut tells me that, or my intuition tells me that there's a lot of what we're doing that is madness. And but on the other hand, I certainly understand why people are fearful, and I do agree that we should be taking precautions. But I think the way that we have gone about it is pretty much insane, like locking down a whole society for months and months. Like, I just think that's total overkill. But again, I actually don't know. Right. And so that uncertainty, I find myself, like, if I'm talking to Tanya about it, I find myself getting worked. It's actually a good reminder that when I get worked up, I make no fucking sense. It's basically like what I've noticed about myself. So I think this is a really good experience for me when there's like an emotionally charged situation of this, like, especially of this scale. I think it's a good opportunity for me to get better at just trying to stay rational as much as possible and trying to learn from a place of curiosity so I can actually form an opinion that will actually, number one, keep my family safe, but number two, allow us to fucking live our lives in a way that is, somewhat tenable at the same time. So
See, I agree with that, but on the other hand, kind of going back to like having the conversation or the topic about the gender, and then we talk about the COVID part. I think the other thing that we also need to recognize is that there's this undercurrent of people seem to have less capacity to be offended, or they're not comfortable with it. So it's like, well, you need to call me such and such, because if you don't, then I feel offended, or I feel that you don't value me as much. So yeah, whether it's compelled speech because the government now says that you need to acknowledge these pronouns, or if you're challenging how we as a society, whether it's in a country or a city, as it relates to the the whole COVID situation. It's like, well, hold on a second, you're making me feel really uncomfortable when you talk about that. I think that's a good fucking idea, because I think if you don't permit that, then you're not actually able to have some meaningful conversations that everybody. It's not like, let's be honest, the world is not all puppies and kittens and everything else. We need to say, hey, you know what, even if you have a half-baked idea as far as how we should be approaching the whole COVID situation, because you're scared, because you're uninitiated, because whatever, it could be a multitude of reasons. I would actually argue to say that maybe that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad place to come from the conversation, so that you can actually talk to somebody else to say, hey, by the way, Jason, you may not be aware of this, and you're like, hey, you know what, that's helpful to know, or I completely fucking disagree with you. I think that really, really important, I would say the most important, and the most important conversations and ideas come from places of differing opinions, and there's going to be some inherent discomfort there, some lesser so than others, but I really, really, really dislike the whole idea that you just can't make people uncomfortable. It's like, well, where the fuck did that become a thing?
yeah. I mean, I like making you guys uncomfortable.
Well, every day, by the way.
But no, I think
Mission
you're right. Like,
accomplished.
there's a narrowing. It feels like in some ways there's a narrowing of allowable opinion, right? And
Yes.
I think, like, when you look at something like COVID or what happened with George Floyd, you need an open, vigorous conversation, a million open, vigorous, curious conversations where you can hear each other's points of view and form new ideas and come to consensus or agree to disagree, or without thinking the other person's a fucking terrible human being who's out to, like, inflict harm. Right. So yeah, I'm with you, man. I think that's what we're doing right now. I mean, it's as, fucking, yeah, I don't know what I was going to say, but I think that's exactly what we're trying to do right now.
Well, and I think you're right. I think there is a parallel between the whole COVID situation and this. I mean, we're in or have gone through kind of a knee-jerk reaction, and I think that's maybe not where the best decisions are made. Emotion is driving a lot of this. People want immediate change, and it just doesn't happen like that. Certainly when you're talking about race relations. It just doesn't, unfortunately. And it's gonna. We have the opportunity to make some important change in a nice big increment, but that's all it's going to be. Yeah, it's some interesting stuff. Here's another thing that I've like in my community with this young man having this video. A lot of the community leaders, the Black community leaders here, have been calling out his entire family, saying this must have come from his family. This must have been learned in the home. And I don't know his mom well, but I know her, and I'm like, that doesn't scan for me at all.
Wow.
I think it's possible that kids just do something that's incredibly stupid.
Oh my God!
It's just.
Do you remember being a teenager?
Yeah, I mean, that didn't come from somewhere else necessarily. You didn't necessarily, kids who either commit suicide, they don't get that because their parents demonstrated it, or use heroin. They don't get that because their parents are cooking up in front of them. Those things can come from all kinds of places. Yeah. But I've been trying to, until now, I guess, kind of biting my tongue about, responding to that, because I'm like, I don't want to seem like I'm defending a white family and I'm white and have it come off like that. But I'm like, oh man, there's some real people are jumping to a lot of conclusions about, dragging this boy. He's a boy, right?
Yeah.
He's a teenager.
His life is being ruined.
He brought it on himself by doing something incredibly fucking stupid.
Yep.
You should have no pretense of privacy if you're recording anything.
Yeah.
Well, how smart is this podcast that we're actually publishing this within hours of having?
I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, I guess so. But no, I mean, it's stuff like that. And I'm just like, yeah, I mean, he doesn't deserve to have his life ruined, but this is an incredible learning opportunity for him and for everybody else in this community and anywhere. These are things that I think, and that's something I'm going to do a better job of this week, is really bringing this topic up with my kids and asking them and really having them drive the conversation versus telling them what I think the standard should be. Even if they say some stuff that's really kind of crazy and wacky, that the government should absolutely control speech or whatever. I mean, that's a starting point for them. Yep. And let's let them work it out. Right.
100%.
And I've not done that very well. I've thought about it a lot. I have not done it. That's something I'm going to commit to do this week.
What? So am I, actually. That's a really good point. Like, I've asked them if they heard, like, so for example, in the George Floyd situation, I mean, I've asked them if they've heard about it, but I actually haven't asked them how they feel about it, which now that we're having this conversation, I'm going to do that today. Like, because I think that is a really, this is how shit gets changed, right? We were talking about this at the very beginning. It's a dad talking to his fucking kids and creating the space for them to share their own opinion. Like, we talk about this big marketplace of ideas. Probably the most important marketplace of ideas is the one that's right at home. Yeah. Right. So yeah, I mean, that's a direct thing that has come out of this podcast for me. So thanks for that, Scott.
That's great. Have your kids seen the video? I have not.
They haven't. They're aware of it, but they don't want to watch it.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, that's a good point too. Let them choose whether or not they want to watch it, because it is. I mean, it's pretty extreme.
Yeah.
From what I hear, again, I have not seen it, but yeah, that's something I'm going to commit to do. So it might be a good idea to come back next week and even.
Yeah.
Not to necessarily take up another second week on this topic, although we certainly could, because this is not going away anytime soon, unless something else more major comes and steals the headlines. But I'm gonna come back and kind of update, kind of maybe what we've done during the week. Not to put anybody on the spot, but that's something I would love to do, is just to say, hey, this is what kind of happened. This is what we talked about. A little accountability.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Hey, on a lighter note, and I am disturbed at the fact that the manscaper comes up in every motherfucking podcast episode we do, but John is not impressed.
No, it's Although as we talked about last week, from a customer service perspective, they're on point. I was disappointed with the product. How should I say? What did I say to you, Jason? It cuts the lawn about as quick as like my 90-year-old grandmother.
What you actually said was, and he asked me not to say this on the podcast, but it
You're
cut a
gonna
gash.
say it anyway.
Yeah, like it cut a gash in this fucking nutsack so bad that a ball was actually hanging out. I think that's what you said, isn't it? His
Whatever,
only ball. He's only got one.
Yeah, well, and I've been dragging it around all week, which at least I'm in the home. But god damn it, yeah, no, it was not a good experience. So I have other clippers that will do the job just fine. That I will say, well, I will not require stitches while using.
I just don't understand the fascination with cutting your pubic hair. I mean, fucking just let it grow. Jesus Christ.
What the fuck are you talking about?
Were you going to the south of France and going to the nude beach all the time? I mean, who gives a shit?
If
you got one partner who loves you for who you are anyway, certainly they'll forgive a little jungle down there, right?
No, she said she loves me more when I'm not Afro Man.
Okay.
Yeah, my Tanya feels kind of this. Yeah, that's right. I mean, judging by I was just thinking as you're talking, judging by the thickness of the hair on your head, John, I'm kind of thinking you pushed the Manscaper beyond its fucking design parameters.
Well, I'm not gonna lie, I thought it was a 2-stroke engine, and it's not. And it basically just bound up like I was trying to plow through cable. It just kind of, I'm pretty sure it looked at me like, you want me to do what?
There's smoke pouring out of it.
Yeah, it's like, this is not designed for livestock.
Yeah. Oh, fuck. So listen, I'm going to try this. We tried this on episode 2, and I'm going to try it again. Scott, fucking close us out with something epic.
I opened with that.
Okay.
Save the horse bit for the end.
All right. We'll close off with you. That was basically you whining, Scott, and we're going to fucking leave it there for the week. And there you have it. You might be feeling a little bit dumber as a result of having spent the last hour with us, and quite frankly, you might be right. Until next time.